This crazy world is telling you your sons can be daughters and your daughters can be your sons. When will the madness stop? Never. So you have to decide, will you comply or defy? They tell us all, you will own nothing, eat bugs, and be happy. Is this why America's largest food processing plants and food supply plants keep burning down? Do you really think this is a coincidence? Of course not. The system is telling us right to our faces what they have planned for us. You have a choice. Comply or simply defy their plan for us all. Defy the system's plan and execute your own plan. Abundant, safe, secure natural food supply. Introducing the Food Forest Bible. This bestseller by Jovan Hutton Pulitzer is the single most complete, executable, easy-to-follow plan for sustainable, self-managing food production for self-sufficiency and food security. For the first time ever, a coffee table, heirloom quality full color book which unlocks the ancient secrets of creating a food forest. Imagine planting in a way which requires no digging, no pesticides, and creates massive ancient food abundance. No fooling. Food forests are the ancient secret to planning and planting once. And have your own Garden of Eden, which will feed your families for decade after decade. Buck the system. Buck the New World Order and order your very own copy of Jovan Hutton Pulitzer's Food Forest Bible. Learn how to create a sustainable, self-managing, natural food production for self-sufficiency and food security for your family. Side yard, small yard, backyard, backlot, or even lots of acres, the Food Forest Bible works for everyone. Order on Amazon, hardcover, softcover, or ebook. Don't comply. Expertly defy the system.
Hey guys, welcome to the program. We're going to do a quadruple history check. Just an interesting subject, something that might help you understand the process of linear thinking, right? And a comparative cross correlations. We're going to take a look, the lost city of Atlantis, fable or fact, you decide. Because history is always written by the victors. That's how it applies to today. And so we're going to have a little bit of fun. Go ahead and raise that finger and share this program. By the way, today's program is brought to you by the fine folks at Gold Co. Here's what I'm asking you to do. Request your free gold and silver kit today. Do it from my fine partners at Gold Co. Go to jovanlovesgold.com. Request your free gold and silver kit today because now is the time to protect your money from gold and silver. And if you actually wanted to test this, you could try to pull money out of your 401k or your IRA or whatever the case may be, right? And they'll want to ding you, in some cases, up to 50%, even though it's your money. Folks, go to jovanlovesgold.com. Get the information. At least be literate about your money. And by the way, as you have holiday seasons upon you, I've got something for you, right? I've got something for you. I want you to, would you please, okay, go to CB Distillery. It's cbdistillery.com. Remember, use the promo code Jovan. I don't want you to miss out on this one. Holidays are hectic enough. Family drama, last minute shopping, late nights can make holidays feel like an endurance test. That's why I'm sharing the ultimate holiday survival plan, CBD from CB Distillery. Seriously, everything you need for a merry holiday is here. Maybe you stuffed mom or dad's stocking with CBD for better sleep. Maybe for you or your workout buddies, how about a pain relief stick for the post-workout pain? And don't forget to grab some Holiday Calm gummies for yourself. Every CB Distillery product is made from premium quality, clean ingredients. No artificial filters or anything artificial for that fact. And with over 2 million customers and 100% money-back guarantee, it's kind of hard to go wrong. This is my go-to bomb right there, the CBD relief stick. There it is. Ask people in chat right now. Scan the code on your screen. You can do it. This year, give yourself and everyone on your list a gift of better sleep, less stress, and pain relief from CBD from CB Distillery. And with promo code RUMBLE, you can save 25% on your entire purchase. Visit CBD, right? CBD. Don't forget, that's part of the name, CBD. CB Distillery. Get it? CBDistillery.com and enter promo code RUMBLE. That's for 25% off. That's CBDistillery.com. Promo code RUMBLE. CBDistillery.com. Specific product availability depends on individual state regulations, right? Okay, we're going to do an interesting little exercise in understanding history, how you cross-correlate things, etc. It's a story you've probably heard your whole life, the lost city of Atlantis. But we're going to look at it from an investigative standpoint. And then you decide. So, lost city of Atlantis, is it a fable, a myth? Is it fact? You decide. It's going to be fun. Share this right now. We'll get started.
Warning. The following program has been rated Gilligaff and is intended for open-minded audiences. If the truth offends you, or if you are allergic to focused intensity, intellectual athleticism, or the occasional F-bomb or even irreverent humor, please switch off now. If your delicate sensibilities need to be worried about or addressed, might we recommend the Underwater Basket Weaving channel to you? Otherwise, sit back, enjoy the wisdom, insight, and wicked sense of humor.
Cut the crap. How many times a day do you want to say that to politicians, the elite, the loony liberals, the fake news media, and the gender-confused, emotional socialist snowflake crowd? Cut the crap is your secret weapon for fighting for our freedoms and our great republic. It all begins with a massive mental enema, freeing you from the toxic news and politically correct views, which constipate your consciousness with stinking thinking. Your host, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. He's known for calling out politicians and telling them to cut the crap. You've seen him on virtually every television network and listened to him on Coast to Coast Radio. And now he's here to help you learn to fight for America. Culture, race, and American politics. They all have one thing in common. They all need to cut the crap. Now, here's your host, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer.
Okay, folks, welcome to the program. By the way, welcome across the various channels. Wilson or Mike over on Instagram and others, or maybe Diana on YouTube and others tuning in. All the ones folks on Getter, I want to thank you for being here. Here's what we're doing. We're going to talk about the lost city of Atlantis, fable or fact, and you decide. Now, you might wonder, well, I thought you'd cover culture, race, and American politics. Well, this is exactly culture, race, and American politics. But it's also a study in how society can be wrong, how history can be manipulated. And so if anything, I hope to impart to you during this is to encourage you to deep dig and dive on yourself. So we're going to use the lost city of Atlantis as kind of a measuring point. Is a lot of our history corrupted? That's my first question for you. Put it in chat. Do you believe that our history, or well, let me say it this way, is our history correct, or is our history as mankind corrupt? Is history correct, or is history corrupt? Craig said that Atlantis is a fable, or are you saying our history is a fable? Is our history correct, or is our history corrupt? Okay, Kelsey says our history's correct. Anybody else have a different opinion? I'm seeing over Kitty Lover, and boy, does she love her some Kitty on Rumble, saying corrupt, or sooner corrupt, more corrupt, more corrupt, more corrupt. Well, that's all that's kind of up for grabs in this thing, is to use your own mind, look at the facts, right? There you go. History is a fable and corrupt. Thank you for qualifying that, sir. by looking at the past, we can learn tremendous things about where we're headed as mankind. You know, I spent decades exploring the wilds of our planet. And so I have a completely different view than most people do. And I think all of our history is very corrupted. And so I'll use this as a way to help you have a historic lens. And I'm going to use 4 historic time periods just to give you kind of a funnel, right? We're going to take you from here and we're going to push you down to a funnel. So you're looking at something through the best possible eyes you can. First off, how many of you watched or remembered this particular Brad Pitt movie?
Nearly 3,000 years ago, the passion for one woman ignited the greatest battle ever fought for love.
I want her back. Will you go to war with me, brother? We're sending the largest fleet that ever sailed.
We need the greatest warrior.
Achilles can't be controlled.
Be careful, King of Kings. First, you need the victory.
I won't ask you to fight my war. You already have.
No son of Troy will ever submit to a foreign ruler.
Then every son of Troy shall die. We will be together in this world or the next.
Immortality!
Before my time is done, I will look down on your corpse and smile.
What's up?
Okay, so let me tell you why I bring this in as a way to filter down where we're headed today. You've heard of the Trojan horse, you've heard of the lost city of Troy, etc. That was the major motion picture telling of Troy. What you probably didn't know was that Troy was considered a myth, a total made up piece of ancient BS. Now that comes to us from the university system and archaeologists. Now, if you've read any of my particular series of lost history, lost treasure books, I retell the story of a German Jew grocer. I'm going to retell that to you real quick because that's the filter I want to get you headed to now that you have Troy. See, Troy was talked about, this movie I just showed you with Brad Pitt. Troy was described in the book of the Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer. Okay? Now imagine being a young fellow and your father is reading you a book at night to teach you to read, etc., telling you a story. And this is the book your father chose to read. And you're a young child, and in the reading, rereading, and constantly reading of this book, you kind of have a thought in your head, damn, there's just so many details in here that this place must be real. But yet, universities said it was a myth and bullshit and made up. The academia said no go. Well, that little boy was this fellow by the name of Heinrich Schliemann. Heinrich Schliemann. And so he wasn't very good in school, had a problem paying attention, got his way through it, and became a merchant, then became a grocer, became basically a trading titan on his own. And when he kind of cashed out of that system, he used his particular wealth to do some exploring. The exploring he wanted to do is he had in his mind, damn it, this book, the Iliad, the Odyssey, that my father would read to me and I read so many times, it has to be real. There's just too many details in that book, vivid descriptions that aren't fanciful. And it's just told in a way, this looked like this looked like this was located here, etc. And so he was fascinated with Homer in this book. Now, history would acknowledge that Homer was real, but they classified this great historian and teacher, the system classified him as a fiction writer. So Heinrich Schliemann said BS. And he spent his money mounting an expedition looking for the lost city of Troy. And he made the discovery. Now, I'll give you a little technicalities of the time. Most people in the university system don't teach about them. And they don't teach about them because actually what he found and discovered was the Mycenaean culture. But his first discovery, which he thought was Troy, actually wasn't Troy. Troy was found just a little bit later. And so the system uses that one thing to say, well, no, he really didn't. Now, here's another interesting thing about the system. Archaeologists beat the crap out of Schliemann. And the reason they beat the crap out of Schliemann is they say that, well, he wasn't an archaeologist, and so he can't actually say that, or get credit for finding it. He was just a Jewish grocer. He was not an archaeologist. And so that's how they kind of discount him. You want to know what the kicker to the story is? Who was the father of archaeology? Heinrich Schliemann. See, there was no archaeology when he did it. And it was his work that actually created the history, the style, the investigation, the digging, learning from trial and error, that created the entire discipline of archaeology. And they say, well, he wasn't an archaeologist. He kind of created it. Okay, so I'm using that juxtaposition, the Iliad, the Odyssey, which modern academics, even though Homer was a scholar, a teacher, right? The system basically wanted to say that particular work was fiction. Okay. The moral of that story is, when you look at Homer and the Iliad, and he's looking back in time, 500, 1,000 years, whatever the case may be, he's writing about something he was not there for, but he told the true facts. And it was using his books, talking about it, that enabled the city, the culture, and everything to be discovered, to be confirmed, and everything else. So put a pin in it. We're going to talk about another fellow for a moment. So you've got that piece of history, okay? There are books written that have been said it was fable, it was BS, and it's modern man saying it's fable and BS, as if anyone could call it fable and BS when they weren't there. But we'll take that. Now we're going to jump forward, and we're going to jump to Plato, right? Plato. I've been to Plato's house. Oh, wait a minute. That was Plato's retreat in New York City when I was a young man. Don't look that up. It was a different kind of research. But anyway, Plato wrote, right? And Plato has come to us over time. And you know, he's one of the great teachers, philosophers, historians of the world, right? Plato, this guy. Let me get that right there. Okay, Plato. Now, Plato's famous for giving a story a meaning, not by creating it up, of, okay, let me tell you the ancient story of the lost city of Atlantis. The lost city of Atlantis. So I want you to understand the reason I give you these analogies, and I'll give it to you real quick in a biblical reference. You know, the Bible tells stories of actual people, which again, they called myths. Academics called it a myth that goes back several thousand years. The Bible, right? Homer did the same thing. The question is, did Plato do the same thing? Now, Plato goes further back than most, but can somebody write a documentation of something that occurred that was documented over time, but they decided to write about it and tell a story of a true fact? That's the question we're going to question here is could this have been true at one point in time? And what is truth, etc.? Okay, what is truth, etc.? That's what we're going to be exploring here. So let me share with you the story of Plato and his telling of this myth, fable, or fact of the city of Atlantis.
Enter the enigmatic realm of the legendary city of Atlantis, a place that has intrigued humanity for centuries. As narrated by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, this is a tale of an ancient city lost in the depths of the ocean. A story that continues to fascinate and puzzle us. A legend that has stood the test of time. In Plato's work, Critias, Poseidon, the god of the sea, is allotted a portion of the earth just like the other gods. Poseidon was appointed as the ruler of the island of Atlantis, which he transformed into an invincible stronghold that no one could conquer. Poseidon created circular zones of land and sea around the hill that were inaccessible to enemies. The central island was transformed into a bountiful and fertile place with abundant food. Poseidon and Clito, a beautiful woman from Atlantis, had 10 children divided into 5 pairs of twins. Poseidon named the eldest son Atlanta, and the island and ocean took the name Atlantic from him. The family ruled the island for many generations, expanding their power from the Pillars of Hercules to Egypt and the Tyrrhenian Sea. The ruling family reigned as the most affluent dynasty, with the island serving as a veritable treasure trove of resources. Over time, humans' divine aspect waned, giving way to the mortal element. Consequently, humans began to stray, unable to bear the weight of their wealth. They were consumed by greed to amass more, so Zeus punished them. In Plato's Timaeus dialogue, Critias recounts the story of Atlantis, supposedly told by Egyptian priest to Solon, the well-known Athenian lawmaker. The legend goes that around 9,000 years before Solon's time in the 7th century BC, the ancient Athenians successfully defended themselves against an attack by the mighty island of Atlantis. We have recorded numerous impressive deeds of Athens and are in awe, the Egyptian priest said to Solon. However, one accomplishment stands out above all others regarding greatness and virtue. According to historical accounts, your city once overcame an invading force that had arrogantly swept through all of Europe and Asia. This force had come from an island near the mouth of the Gibraltar Strait, which you called the Pillars of Hercules. The island was more significant than Asia and Libya combined, and travelers could pass from it to other islands and the opposite bank of the sea. The mouth of the strait contained a port with a narrow entrance, while the other side was an actual sea surrounded by a continent. On Atlantis, kings had established a tremendous and magnificent power that ruled over the entire island, many other islands, and parts of the continent. This power extended from Libya to Egypt and from Europe to Tyrrhenia. The Atlantean forces gathered together in an attempt to enslave all of us, from your people to ours and everyone in between. However, your city and Rome demonstrated their strength and virtue, and after being abandoned by the other Greek states, fought alone and defeated the invaders. They set up a trophy and refused to let those who had never been enslaved become enslaved. Your city also generously freed the rest of us who lived near the Pillars of Hercules. Sadly, terrible earthquakes and floods occurred, and within a day and night of horror, the earth swallowed up your entire army, and the island of Atlantis sank into the sea and was destroyed. As a result, the sea in those areas remains treacherous and unexplored, with the remnants of the sinking island causing shallow mud that poses a constant obstacle. Many scholars speculate that the story of Atlantis, as told by Plato, may have been inspired by the volcanic eruption that destroyed the island of Thera Santorini around 1600 BC. The island's structure closely resembles Plato's description of Atlantis, implying that the myth could be based on a historical event. However, it is also possible that Plato created the myth to highlight the importance of ethical and enlightened city administration, which he also discussed in his work, Politeia, Republic. Another perspective suggests that the myth of Atlantis originated from legends about the destruction of an ancient civilization passed down through generations. Many theorists link the myth of Atlantis' lost city to a technologically advanced civilization destroyed by a natural disaster. Although these theories are speculative, they provide fascinating insights into the origins and fate of Atlantis.
Okay, so that's basically Plato's telling, what Plato was known for saying about Atlantis. And all we're discussing is myth or whatever, and you hear the videos keep on saying mythology, mythology, mythology. I want to give you an example of myths that ultimately get proven as fact. The Chinese, for thousands of years, and if you've followed me for years, I've told this story before, but the Chinese, for thousands of years, told a story, okay, of a red-eyed demon that when man traveled to the highest mist of unknown mountain ranges, that the demon would just obliterate them. And it has been told for thousands of years. In relatively modern times, it was an American president, Theodore Roosevelt, who actually mounted an expedition that he was paid to do to go see if he could capture one of these mythical beasts. And he did. And he brought it back. And it's why to this day you know what a panda is. Right? So I tell you that story so you understand that there are many things that have been said are myths that over time, science, technology, people, exploration funds catch up, and they prove them to be real. It's happened in modern time. And that's a fascinating piece of our American history because it was an American president that did that. Now, the reason I tell you that is because we're going to take a look at a very specific geological feature. Now, you heard about the city of Atlantis being this mythical ringed city, water island, all that other stuff, right? And that it was a vast culture that was there. This is where the basis of people are saying, well, this is where it could have happened. And that's what I want you to kind of look at it to understand it. But we might have to check our dictionaries at the door. And the reason we might have to check our dictionaries at the door is because if I was hurling an insult and I said, you fag smoker, depending upon the time period, depending upon the dictionary at the time, you might have a completely different definition. Right? I'm not calling you a poof. I'm basically saying you smoke cigarettes. See, that's what happens to words over time. And so when you're doing anything for history, and a lot of my research and exploration is just studying how the words changed over time. And so I'm asking you to suspend your definitions for a moment. And let's take a journey and take a look at what Plato said and attempt to fact check Plato and decide. Now, if you had to guess right off the cuff, right? Oh, by the way, people are talking about, Patrick Duffy, Man from Atlantis. It was a great show. I love that show. Another show I loved is Buck Rogers in the 21st Century. Remember that? Gil Gerard, Aaron Gray, etc. Right? Aaron Gray? Yeah. Gil Gerard passed away yesterday at 82 years old of cancer, just an FYI. Anyway, so let's kind of go through it. We're going to take a look at it. Now, if you had to guess, if in fact there was an Atlantis, okay, do you currently believe it's a city that fell off into the ocean and disappeared? Therefore, where we need to search for Atlantis, they even do this in modern television series. Therefore, where we need to search for Atlantis is in the ocean. Let me know if that's your personal current belief system when it comes to this thing that people talk about, Atlantis. And I'm not debating that or anything. I'm just trying to. It's only an answer of underwater or not. That's the only answer. I'm not looking for where you think it is or anything like that. Have you been led to believe, or do you believe the lost city of Atlantis is basically an underwater feature? Right? Okay. Now, coming down to history, using Plato's description of a description. See, Plato obviously wasn't there. Plato was telling a story of an Egyptian, as a matter of fact. And I want to give you some pieces that, let me put it in here. Let me get it on my screen, that might help you understand regionally. Where are you? What we're talking about. Okay. I'm just pointing out some arrows here on a map of the world. The red arrow is basically the Cape, of Africa. The pink arrow is the Straits of Gibraltar. Ancient times, it was called the Pillars of Hercules. The white arrow is the UK directly above it, Ireland to the left, etc. The other arrow, yellow, would be, Crete, Greece, etc. In between it, take a look at it. Get yourself familiar with the area so you understand where everything is. You can kind of see the boot of Italy in there, right? Okay. Now, a lot of the information that comes down from Plato talking about different things is when Plato wrote in about 360 BCE, he was writing back, or was actually writing about Solon an Egyptian, and was telling a story that had been documented to him, and he was, trying to document it faithfully, etc., of what happened in the ancient world. And this is where the lost city of Atlantis that washed out to the ocean comes from, was swallowed by the ocean. Now, how many different ways, right now, this is just a language thing, how many different variations, just think in your mind, how many different variations could you come up with that could logically explain swallowed by the ocean? I just want you to think about that description. It was swallowed up. And we've got to take some of these words literally, but let's just take it in the common vernacular sense. Swallowed by the ocean. Swallowed by the ocean. What could that entail, right? It could be a tsunami. Right, it could be a tsunami. It could be shifting plates. It could be something like the Bermuda Triangle. It just boomed. It could be the Great Flood. It could be a side of a cliff dropping off into the ocean, right? So you get it. So there are many definitions, right, of swallowed by the ocean. And don't forget the slow raising of the tides, because what they tell us right now with climate change and global warming, that our cities are going to be swallowed by the ocean. Okay. Now put that in your pushed away, pushed up, blown up by a volcano, etc. Yes, that would be Thera, Santorini, Thera, but Thera wasn't technically described as being swallowed by the ocean. Somebody said Lizzo walking. Anyway, okay. So now you understand the different variations of, right, of how you can even describe today swallowed by the ocean. Now, let's look at one word. And I know you're going to make, and it could be, gigantic fissures, whatever. Just let's keep that in your mind. Definitions vary. I want to do one word. I know I'm setting it up for humor, but I'm being serious. If you had to actually describe the word swallowed, I know, try to keep it clean. We'll try to keep it fun. Well, I can't say fun because that is. If you had to describe the word swallowed, and it's not Kamala, I saw that. What would that actually mean? If you were trying to describe to a blind person the act of swallowing, how would you describe it? Disappeared is one. I want to go a little bit more in depth, okay? Overtakes one, but see, you're only getting to the final point. We understand it disappears. We understand it's overtaken, but see, that's not what I'm saying. I want you to describe the act from beginning to end. And yes, we know it's consumed. Yes, we know it's overtake. Yes, we know it's etc. But I'm looking for a little more of a description, a literal description. And golf, I got it. You're at the end of the swallowing act. I want you to begin from the beginning of the swallowing act. And how do you know it was swallowed? And I probably shouldn't use this. If I was to take this and I could swallow it, I'm sorry. If I was going to take this and I could swallow it, how would you describe it? Here's what I'm getting to. Ready? Something, a physical thing, was swallowed by the ocean. So you get into the backside of it versus there's something physical, and the act of swallowing, right, act of swallowing is what? When you swallow, this is not a medical thing. When you swallow, which way, Dina's saying do it. When you swallow, it's not a dramatic event. I'm being literal. There is no euphemisms here, even though there's a lot of puns we can do. And I got devoured and I got whatever, and I got moved to another location. You're getting closer. But if you were to put something in your mouth and swallow it, which direction does it go? Down. You see where I'm getting with this? Down, down. So what if what is being talked about is it went down? That's the first part of it, down. It's very simple. See, sometimes we miss this in the study of words. Now, by the ocean, let's give by the ocean another description. We've now, right? We've now, because we think the ocean pulled down Atlantis. Atlantis is at the bottom of the ocean. Let's stop about thinking Atlantis is at the bottom of the ocean. Is that okay? And let's say we now know swallow, right? It does mean engulfed. It does mean consumed. But it has a very distinct direction. And that direction is down. Can we agree on that? Swallowing's an act. We can get that. Engulfed, consumed, etc. But swallowing, by default, comes off. Did I say that? I did. I didn't mean to. Comes with a direction to it. And that direction is down. Now let's set that aside. Let's look at into the ocean. Okay? Into the ocean. Now, other than literally going into the ocean, meaning the ocean consumed it, the ocean gulped it down, or whatever the case may be, if you were describing something went into the ocean, swallowed by the ocean, going into the ocean, how could you use that descriptive for something else? Right? Could it be a house falling off a cliff went into the ocean? Sure. Could it be a rock on a slope, rolled down a slope, and it rolled into the ocean and disappeared? Therefore, it was swallowed by the ocean. You get what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to look at the words and you have to suspend your common vernacular, right? And understand. I'll give you an example. See, washed, if we were looking at ancient terms, washed would describe a tsunami. Why? The waves hit, it bashed, it banged, it washed, and it did it. Get it? Because washing was a beating action, right? They would beat them on rocks. So you got to understand, words matter in this thing. Words matter. So that's kind of where I want to kind of set the tone on this, because we're going to look very hard at words. At words. Camp Mystic was washed away. It wasn't consumed by a river, that horrible event in Texas. It was washed away by a river. So this is where words are going to matter, and I've always told you that words matter. Now, what we're going to look at a geological feature. Now, remember, the topic of today's story is Plato's description of Atlantis. And if you followed that, it basically said it was a concentric circle, island in the center, great walls, water everywhere, lush lands, right? And that it had a port that could go out to the ocean. That is Plato's description that he was given of Atlantis. Now, I want to show you something that has been known for a very long time, and this is the subject we're going to explore. Could something like this exist? But if we suspend belief for a moment, And we always look for the second right answer. Could there be another explanation for this? So here you go.
Richat structure, the Eye of the Sahara.
By the way, when you think of the Sahara Desert, do you think of the ocean? Honest question. When you think of the Sahara, do you think of the ocean? Not really. So we're going to look back at this map. Hang on, click the wrong one. There you go. We're going to look back at this map real quick, okay? The white arrow pointing to the UK to the left is Ireland. The pink arrow is the Pillars of Hercules. That is another break in the wall that created the Mediterranean, the Bosphorus, etc., to the north, and Turkey. Yellow is Greece. The red dot that you see, that's the Sahara Desert. Okay? That's the Sahara Desert. What we're going to do real quick is we're going to go to the Sahara Desert, a sea of sand, right? But we're going to look at something called the Eye of the Desert.
Richat structure, the Eye of the Sahara. From the vast expanse of the Sahara Desert emerges a sight so unique it can be seen from space. Known as the Richat structure, or more famously, the Eye of the Sahara, this mysterious formation has captivated scientists and explorers alike. Located in Mauritania, deep in the desert, the Richat structure spans an incredible 40 kilometers in diameter. Its massive concentric rings stand in stark contrast to the surrounding arid sands, making it one of the most intriguing geological features on Earth. When first discovered, the Eye of the Sahara was thought to be the result of a meteorite impact. Its circular shape and massive scale seemed to fit the profile, but further studies revealed something even more fascinating.
We now believe the Richat structure is a deeply eroded geological dome formed over hundreds of millions of years by natural uplift and erosion.
This dome consists of ancient rock layers, some of which date back over 500 million years, predating life itself. Over time, wind and water carved away the softer layers, revealing this mesmerizing bullseye pattern. The Richat structure is not just a geological marvel. It also provides a window into Earth's distant past, showcasing layers of sedimentary rock that hold clues to the planet's early history. Astronauts have long been fascinated by the Eye of the Sahara, often using it as a landmark while orbiting Earth. Its striking shape and size make it one of the most recognizable features from space.
It's incredible to see from space, like a giant target etched into the desert.
Despite its scientific explanations, the Eye of the Sahara retains an air of mystery. Some even speculate about ancient civilizations or links to the lost city of Atlantis, adding to its allure. The Richat structure is a testament to Earth's incredible geological history, a place where science, wonder, and the imagination converge. Whether seen from the ground or from the stars, the Eye of the Sahara remains one of our planet's most extraordinary landmarks.
Okay, that's just that's a story to introduce you to this thing I'm going to show you. The images that were used in that video, were not correct. What I want to now share with you is I'm going to take you to the exact structure, okay? I'm going to take you to the exact structure. Let me get my proper window set. Hang on one second. And we're going to go one here. Okay. You should be seeing on your screen Google Earth. Okay. Now, what I'm going to take you to, you don't try to guess what it is, sinkhole or anything like that. Just hang on here. So here it is. And you can see my cursor moving around on Google Earth. Now you can see many of the things in Homer's description, Pillars of Hercules, ancient Greece, etc., are all right there. And by the way, the Gulf Stream, if you can see my cursor, the Gulf Stream goes like this, and then it kicks in a circle. In fact, you can kind of see the circle there, right there. It kicks in a circle, and it comes back up this coast right here. It's just a big circular Gulf Stream. And so I want to basically take you to this structure, okay? And so we're going to go into the Sahara to this structure. Now I'm going to back out, and I want to give you a look at it. There it is. Rishat, Rishalt, wherever you want to call it. It's in Mauritania. It is in the desert now, okay? And geologically, it's been looked at many times over time. It's so significant, I'm just going back through a timeline here, that it's seen from outer space. Okay, so I'm just giving you the orientation. Here's the mountain range. You can see it's kind of quasi on a valley, and then it kind of runs downstream right to the ocean right here. And you can see all the drift stridation of how this plane is swept, etc. Okay, so I'm doing that just to give you a understanding of where we're going to go. So let me show you some of these pictures and the structure so you can understand this structure. Now remember, we have a very vivid description from Plato, which I got from Solon, of the structure, that it was a massive, incredible structure. Well, here's kind of what the eye looks like from space. Now you can see those concentric circles. If you were to look at it throughout time, these circles happen to be very interesting things, very fertile, and they literally do, in fact, hold water. So I'm going to take you through just a series of these, and remember where it is, right? You can see it kind of on the right there, right? But it's kind of a downsloping structure. It has a slight angle to it, okay? And some of the photos of this thing from space are, well, dare I use astronomical as a double entendre? It's true. Now, this thing is way before time old. Has its own climate, etc. Now, I want you to suspend belief for a moment, to stop thinking in modern terms. Stop thinking in modern terms. See, that's the deal. If you don't understand history and context, you don't understand the terminology that came along. But I want you to understand a few things. I mentioned to you Homer. I mentioned to you Plato. I mentioned to you the ancient Bible, etc. It is possible to be historically correct talking about things that even happened 1,000 years before your time. Okay? That even happened 1,000 years before your time. We now know this is possible. So what we're going to do here is we're going to see how many. Yeah, it's a hurricane generator. That's how they spin. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what Plato said and this feature. Now, what I want you to understand about this feature, okay, and its walls. The outer walls are at 1,591 feet. That's the elevation. If you were looking downwind, which I kind of showed you, right, how it runs downwind, it runs from an elevation of 1,591 feet to 22 feet. at the ocean's edge. And then, of course, it goes to elevation 0, which is the ocean. So I want you to understand how this works. Okay. Now we're going to look at its concentric circles, and we're going to look for coincidences. Okay. Because there's a difference. You know, there's 480 meters at the top, hundreds of kilometers down the way, just straight down the way. Nouakchott area runs right off into the ocean. Okay? Runs right off into the ocean. So you have to understand this. So when we look at this, here's what I'm asking you to do. Let's just kind of compare Plato's Atlantis to the Rishat structure, the Eye of the Sahara. And let's just look at common claimed parallels. Now, Plato described a concentric circle. He says this capital where these people were located were a concentric circle of rings. So the first thing in the pop quiz, is this a concentric circle of rings? Just kind of put it yes and no. Is this a concentric circle of rings? Put it in chat. So if we were trying to look at this thing and we were just looking at fact checking it, that's it. Is this a concentric circle of rings? And the fact is, well, absolutely yes. This thing is in fact a concentric circles of rings. Now, the other thing that Plato said was there is a centroid or a central island where a palace or a temple were. And so that means it has to have a central core. Okay, so you know where we are in Africa. It has to have a central core. So my question is, does this appear to you to have a central core? It's very simple. Yes or no. Put it in chat. Can you see a central core? Well, of course you can. Okay? That's why they call it the Eye of the Sahara. So from that standpoint, it does have a central core. Now, Plato said the central core was where the people were. We're going to get to people in a minute. All we're doing is using simple facts, no wordsmithing, no whatever. You don't have to squint your eyes and look, right? You just kind of have to look at it. Now, the next thing he said, right, that this was, and when he said concentric, and then he said a central core, you're literally talking a bullseye, which is one of the ways Plato described it, that it was very geometric, all built around this core. So the other question is this very geometric all around the core? And the answer is yes. I'll give you some interesting facts because the core walls, this thing is about, well, let me just use Plato's words. Plato said that it was not only a city, it was massive, right? It was a massive center for civilization. He described it as a massive city. Well, you're looking at something that's about 30 miles across. 30 miles across. Okay? Now, would you call that massive? We can see it from space. Would you agree with the descriptive that it's massive? Of course you would. This is the Sentinel data. This one's just from 2017 I'm showing to you. It's massive. And you can see water, etc. He basically said, on another fifth point, was that the rings were navigatable water zones. Navigatable water zones. We know from satellite that those rings do, in fact, collect water. You can actually see the water in them. In many of them, you can see the water. So these rings collect water. Again, we're only discussing the plausibility. Now, what do you need in a moat or in a canal to be able to hold in water? And no, this is a natural geologic formation. It is not built by the giants or men of old. If you're going to hold in water to something, what do you need? Okay? You need to contain it. And in containing it, it has to have walls. Can we agree? Got to have walls. It can't run out one way, can't run out the other way. It's got to have walls. Okay, so the question is, well, does this look like it has walls? Because Plato said that these rings you could navigate by water. Well, the answer is, when you look at it, yes, there are walls. Just as Plato's describing, to hold in water, think fishing ponds, think anything else, it's got to have a bottom to it somewhere. And remember where we are in this, etc. Now, Plato went on to say that it was beyond the Pillar of Hercules. I want you to understand that statement when you understand beyond the Pillar of Hercules. That's a very important descriptive. It basically gives you a mode of travel beyond. Now, what was beyond in ancient time? In ancient time, when they spoke of beyond, which is the same reason you have demons on ancient navigation maps, because the old structure, the old system didn't want you going beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which is the Strait of Gibraltar. They didn't want you going on out into the Atlantic, which is where King Solomon was said to have got his riches. Well, that little pink arrow is the Pillar of Hercules, the Gate of Hercules. You know it as the Gibraltar Strait. And so if the seat of the ancient world was where you see the yellow arrow, can you accurately say that the red arrow is beyond the gates of Hercules? Can you say that it is beyond the gate of Hercules? And remember, everything was navigation at this point. That was the travel outside of camel and caravan. And so they're talking of travel beyond the gates of Hercules. And as you can see, the red arrow is in fact on the outside. Plain as day, you can see it. Just look at a map. Where was Plato? And you got the yellow arrow. Where was this place supposedly be? Beyond the gates of Hercules. So we kind of know that checks out. It was beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Now, the Pillars of Hercules has always been Gibraltar. It basically, in his description, it said that it was nearby the mountains. Near the mountains. In the description I played earlier. So the question is this feature near the mountains? And the fact that one checks out too, right? Because Plato mentions the Atlantean setting, and he says it's raised rocky terrain plateaus. Basically, they are called mountains. He also said that there was a large organized plain, basically meaning to broad surrounding lowlands. Would you say, potentially here, there are surrounding lowlands? If you look at the mountainous area directly above the concentric circles here, you see the raised land. If you turn the orientations and put the mountains at the back, would you say that in fact that it is pointing to a broad lowland? Right? Well, that's correct. You can see it for yourself. Now, Plato also said that Atlantis was destroyed in a singular day and night. A singular day and night. Now, the last thing that is in this is there's a town, and Plato mentioned it in all his works, Quadane, Quadane, Quadane. Quadane is an old Saharan caravan name, an old Saharan caravan name. And so you begin to look at the names around it. Quadane means ancientness nearby. Quadane. Ancientness is nearby. Now, at the beginning of this lesson, I explained to you how Troy and the Iliad and the Odyssey was all right, considered myths and crap. Same thing with King Solomon and all that, all considered crap until they were proven. And I'm only asking you to look at this feature and basically try to ascertain, does this match what Plato said it would? Now we're going to look at timelines. This is what you need to understand. The walls of this around the centroid are 260 feet tall. Now, let's just put it into context of ancient man. Let's say you were going to found a city, right? And you stumbled upon, however it happened in ancient time, about you stumbled upon a vast natural occurring structure out there. 30 miles around, concentrically ringed, not by sand, it sits above the sand. Yes, there's sand there all around now. It's right on the ancient lines of trade that for some reason, why were they trading there if it was a desert? See, this is why you got to look at the ancient names. The ancient trade routes went there, literally to its door. So let's say you find this structure, and on the center of the centroid, you go, I'm going to build my city and take my people here. And what you find is I've got water. It's already contained for me. Hell, I got a walled structure. Now, you tend to think of it, and it is correct to think, well, hell, you'd be protected from the sandstorms. Pause on that one for a minute. So, just in logical terms, just like Mesoamerican, anything in the Americas, mound builders, they built mounds so they could see for miles up on a protected platform. Well, here you go. You're on a protected platform that is up out of the sand. Your inner walls are 260 feet tall. We're talking a football field straight up. And then it's concentric circles. These concentric circles, even satellite probes, can contain water. And you see its proximity to the ocean. So just a very simple question. If you were ancient man and you were traveling, maybe you were trading on a caravan, who knows, way back, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. And the native people talk about the ancientness. Would you literally, right? Would you go, wow, I'm going to put my people here. I'm going to form something here. We know something had to form there because it's along the ancient trading routes. And the answer is logically yes. Now, of course, Grok is going to say there is no archaeological evidence for that. They only read what's in system. See, I'm not giving you archaeologists' opinion. I'm just giving you the facts that are verifiable. See, when you put in that word Atlantis, it changes everything. Period. We're just talking about the geological feature. We're just talking about the place. If you came upon it from the higher lands, you're coming from the higher lands down towards the ocean along the trade routes. If in ancient times you found this, you go, holy shit, I'm going to build my place here. The outer rim peak. The outer rim peak is at an elevation of 1,591 feet above the ocean. When you get down to the coast is just a mere 6 meters. Okay. Now I need to explain to you a different event. I want you to suspend what archaeologists say at the moment, and I want you to consider the time periods. So if we already know that Homer in the Iliad, which they said was crap, was describing something real and literal, let's assume that Plato is as well. And they kind of give us a time marker in this thing. Plato gives us a time marker. Now, the time marker that you need to understand in all of this, which you might not have ever heard of, okay, is something that happened in history that really doesn't get talked about. What color was the Sahara? What color is the Sahara? Put it in chat. What color is the Sahara? Can you name a color? Here it is on the screen. What color is the Sahara? What color is the Sahara? Yellowish, sand color, etc. Well, see, what history doesn't teach you is what is called the African humid period. The African humid, H-U-M-I-D, humid period. Now, during the African humid period, the Sahara was green. Yes. See, one of the reasons the Sahara is the Sahara, let me tell it to you this way. If you overfarm land, this is just an analogy, and I'm not saying it was overfarmed, but if land got overfarmed, farmland, right, and that topsoil begins to degrade and die, the one thing you notice is as it's dying over time, it becomes what? Sandy. It's the last little bit of the mineral elements left of a once fertile land. Sand. And so if we know by sand that it is basically the remnants, it's like Oklahoma, you're right, the Dust Bowl, the sandiness. Where you have sand, you have what was once a very rich land. And see, that's why I'm trying to change your filter a bit from the Sahara, because during the African humid period, the Sahara was green. It had fresh water, it had brackish water, it had mollusk, shellfish, everything else. Period. Now, this would be back in a time before a lot of additional runoff would have happened. And so what would happen, right, in that period is this would have been a green place. This would have been a fertile, lush place. It, in fact, we already know it by scientific studies, and you still know it today by satellite, it holds water. And in fact, if you were to look at it from the darkness, you can see the circle in part right. I got my little red dot there. You can see that range runs down to the ocean. Now, let me ask you a question. If you've got something that has such super high walls and you decide, shit, this is a natural fortress. We have lush land, super high walls. We're technically near the coastline where it comes in, so we're going to get, think of the coastlines, the LAs, the Hawaii. We're going to get great temperate weather. But we go back in time to find that. And back in time, it was lush. And so if you were going to build a city and you came upon this place when it was lush, would you be inclined as an ancient people to build your city there? And the answer is yes. So now we've got a lot of facts that basically point to, yes, this could have been inhabited, but I'm not done. Okay? All of the mineralization shows that during the Green Sahara phase, this was in fact a very rich and robust place. If you were looking at time backward from now, you're talking that it's the time that starts from 5,575 years from now, as it was lush, going all the way back to 14,875 years. Now, the question is, between that window of 5,575 years distant from today and 14,875 years to the beginning of the African humid period, do you see you would have an opportunity to build a civilization from there and survive? That's just the question. Okay? You've been basically given what? You've given 9,000 years for a people to be there during this African humid period. Could plausibly, if it was green and it had water and you came upon this thing and said, this is the shit place to be, right? Would you be there? And the answer is yes. Now, what's unique about the Green Sahara is during the African humid period, even though this bullseye of an area was green, the farther areas had in fact already started to become desert. Now, desertification. If you look at a desert, how deserts begin and how deserts end, deserts creep. Desert is kind of like a skin rash, right? They don't just appear. They begin to consume. Things begin to die. They begin to consume. It changes the mineralization in the land. Okay? And so a good example, if you were to look at the Texas Hill Country, right now is through a process of desertification. It's slowly, won't happen in our lifetime, but it is eventually something that will completely deciduate to a desert. Now, when you understand that there was desert, but it was on the outer perimeters because it's a process, then basically I want you to think of this area during the African human period where we know it was green, we know it had water, we know it was lush, we knew it could grow, just like in the Nile Delta, right? In the Nile Delta, that it's incredibly rich to grow, but it's all kind of concentrated into an area. So I want you to kind of imagine what that was, because we even know back in Egyptian times that the desert in ancient Egypt wasn't the desert we know about today. It was rather lush and green. We know that it was the same in ancient Iran and the whole bit, and the etc. Iraq. There was desertification hadn't taken over yet. Now, what it said the people did is in these concentric circles that were already there, already holding water for whatever reason, they connected them with travel ways. So you could use your little boats and you could get around the whole thing. Now let's suspend for belief, just a moment, let's suspend for belief that what we're talking about is in fact what ultimately was Atlantis. And I can show you satellite imagery after satellite imagery. The inner walls areas down from the slopes all held water. You can still see it to this day. And so basically, as it's explained in ancient times, that the people may have created locks, where you could go in and out. So you could basically get around the area. So you can understand how that can happen, right? And you can understand that if in fact you were living in this incredible green place and you had all this water and you built the main part of the city in the heart where the walls are the highest, but you're still fortified, that yeah, you're going to use canoes to get around. I don't know why people poo-poo this, because both in ancient Peru and Mesoamerica, etc., they built and did the same thing. Most people don't understand. See if you know this. What city in the Americas is technically a man-made island that used to be connected by vast canals and was a abundant plain of growth, and a civilization rose up there? See if you know this little bit of trivia. What city in the Americas is actually in a very big caldera, kind of like one of these things, used to have vast canals and farmlands and everything else, and a great civilization rose there because it was technically an inland island in a feature, not all the concentric circles, but not too different than this. Do you know what city it is? In fact, to this day, it's sinking because it is built, not New York City, not the Virgin Islands. Disappointing. I've been there. I didn't find a one. You know it as Mexico City. Going back to the times of Teotihuacan. You're right. Teotihuacan. Mexico City is on a scale that's kind of similar to this. It is also, it's a caldera versus an inverted dome, but it's a caldera. But in ancient times, Teotihuacan culture, it was these little bitty islands of very fertile, and the natives cut channels in it. and they would float around, and they had all of these floating gardens and everything else. And that is what now is the modern city, which has been filled in over time. But the problem is it's continuing to sink and collapse, and that is Mexico City. And most people don't even know that. Now, the reason I tell you that is because Mexico City was an island. But most people think an island means on the ocean. And the greatest example I'll use is all my work for the History Channel on Curse of Oak Island. And you think of this island in the Atlantic. Well, it's only about 50 yards offshore. In low tide, you can walk to it. It's not deep water. And it wasn't always an island. It's only how you look at it in modern terms that it's an island because the water's there. We discovered and mapped many mounds under it, campsites, everything. Of course, they don't tell you that in the History Channel. They need you to believe the island part of it, but it was not really an island. That's a more later time in history that people referred to it as an island. So there's many of these around the world. Just like the Great Island and the Great Lakes. There are massive inland islands. So the other question is, because we think swallowed by the ocean and it was an island, that it should have been in the ocean. Not true. There are great inland islands. You can look it up, etc. Now, here's a little bit I want you to consider. I just want you to consider it. I gave you all of the points that kind of cross-correlate to Plato's, right, description of Atlantis. People get messed up because they think flying saucers, they think all this other stuff, advanced civilization. Well, if something was there for thousands of years, it'd be pretty damn advanced compared to everything out there, don't you think? Now, this is where we're going to get very literal when I ask you to think about etymology of the word swallowed. Swallow. I told you that it is a literal directive. That's why you have to study the etymology of all of this stuff. I told you it was a literal swallow, right? You didn't see me on it, Michelle Hayes? Go back. Me and my team are all season 2. We were the first professional dive team. We're talking about Oak Island, the very first professional dive team and exploration team to be brought to the island that were actual professionals in technology. And we basically used advanced systems to go down into 10X. It's where you saw Dan and his father saying, I waited all my life to be able to see what was down there. And once we showed what was down there, they scrubbed it as fast as they could. But if you see any of the scanning from the Titanic and stuff, the team brought in to scan, those are all my teams that I brought in. But season 2, you can watch it. Anyway, they had done season 1. They had 6 shows. One wasn't good enough to air. It's been going on for, 220 plus years. John Wayne did work there. Errol Flynn did work there. FDR did work there. It's been seized by the government many times back and forth. When they finally got a right to shoot there because 2 brothers bought the land and they could do a little bit of exploration under rules. The television network, History Channel, knew of me. The television producers knew of me and asked me to bring my team in to teach them how to investigate something like this. And could we get down in the hole that had killed so many people, which we did. But I told them right up front, my work's going to conflict with you because we actually know what this is. and you might not want to go there. And they understood that because it's about entertainment, not exactly what the history was. But yes, that was season 2. You might have seen me on Discovery Channel doing this, or Science Channel, etc. It was what I was doing and focusing on, basically because I was retired, doing expeditions all around the world with my team. But anyway, I digress. So when you understand, when you look at these Troy and etc., understanding Troy, and the reason I showed you at the beginning, Troy was found, you're talking about the Troy settlement was in the period about 5,000 plus years ago from today, right? And then you have to understand that Troy was coming about at the end of this African human thing. So we can get history correct. Now, here's the other thing you need to know. If in fact that this was it, and it was this rich, fertile plain, but it was sitting in areas that already had desertification. You can see it to the right from this image from satellite. It had already started. What is an interesting fact of floods or well breaks when it comes to an adjacent desert? And this is just the last little bit I want you to consider. If in fact they did decide, which makes logical sense to me, to build a civilization and this very unique walled structure thing that an army could not march into, why were they the badasses? Nobody could conquer them. You can't march through all this stuff. Total fortification sense. But if these walls were 260 feet high, and with this shits and giggles, you had 100 plus feet of water surrounding and all these things, and you'd already dug networks, and you're in a vast green area, but ultimately it's going to be sand around it pushing to the ocean. And let's say your main walls, earthquake, we don't know, broke. From a desert standpoint, if it's surrounded by desert or whatever, what happens to the water? Now, you got to remember, I want you to understand, this is at a tilt. You can see the tilt here. You can see the highest peaks at 1,591 feet. But yes, it was still walled, but it is at a tilt. Well, first off, that water goes downhill, and you can see the striations. Look at it here, top right. You see the hump of the mountain. It's kind of quasi into the mountain. It's tipping, and the water's going to run down if it broke. You can see that. And what's downhill? The ocean. Now, here is why words matter. Technically, if it had massive waters and it broke, the water would run downhill. And you would logically think it would run into the ocean. And if you can look at a lot of it, you can see how this sand, this land, eroded into a lower plateau on the ocean. You can see it there. But what's the most interesting fact? If all these massive walls, which were naturally created, were holding bazillion tons of water, and how about that, it would be a devastating event, but there's one very unique feature that would happen. Some people say it runs off and dries up. No, there's a second right answer. Let me give you the second right answer. If in fact this was a wall structure to hold water exactly as it does and known, and it actually can show you, I can show you it runs downhill. I can show you that this was during the African human period, which means it was a great Greenland. And so if the walls broke, it would be a disaster. It's like any dam breaking, boom, and it's going to run downhill. It's going to highest elevation, 1,591 feet to the ocean, 6 meters. But you want to know what's interesting? If in fact that's what happened, the water would have never reached the ocean. Do you know why? Because the floods that occur in the deserts don't move very far linearly. They actually get swallowed up and go straight down. And now you know the actual, it doesn't evaporate. It goes straight down. It's not even absorption. The phenomenon of the flood in the desert is not that it rushes all the way down to the ocean. You'll have massive walls. It'll build up sludge and stuff. But it's only a certain matter of time that everything disappears as if being swallowed in an act of going straight down. Now you have why words matter. It's just something for you to consider. It'd be worth an investigation. Share this program. I love you all. Take care.
Our courts are based on clear and convincing evidence. Want convictions? Want justice? For what happened in the 2020 election? Then we need your help. Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. The decision you make in the next few moments could decide whether we ever get our elections fixed or not. Here's why. Trump campaign and allies filed 64 different lawsuits. They all went down in flames. 100% of these cases were presented on "It's the machines," or "The machines changed the votes," or "The voting company executive said he would make sure Donald J. Trump would not win." They all went down in flames. Why? You can't bring theories to court as evidence. No supposed Zoom call or six-degree polynomial math theory or census data is or ever will be proof of fraud. You can't bring theories to court as evidence. Here's why. In both civil and criminal law, the side making a claim carries the burden of proof, and prosecutors must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Without physical or otherwise verifiable evidence, a case cannot meet this high threshold. Physical evidence is the key. The question is, did anyone get relevant, reliable, provable, testable, and duplicatable evidence of what really happened in the 2020 general election? And the answer is yes, absolutely. The full forensic audit of Maricopa County, Arizona is the only evidence-gathering work which gathered relevant, reliable, provable, testable, and duplicatable evidence of what really happened in the 2020 general election. Evidence so damning that the system, the deep state, and those who pull the strings of this country have fought to keep it hidden and have hoped to have it be forgotten to time. Almost $3 million invested in time, funds, and efforts to unlock that which the system wanted hidden. But now, that evidence is in danger of being lost forever. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then we need your help. Please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence. With the 2026 midterms coming up, the system is going to try to lame duck President Trump and then most likely introduce new impeachment proceedings. This is the evidence which will help win the war which is surely to come. We need to keep Maricopa County full forensic investigation and archive secure and ongoing. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then we need your help. Please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence. We need your help securing the full forensic audit archives. Don't allow the only testable, objective, and reliable 2020 election evidence fall into obscurity. Millions were spent on getting it documented and tested. This is historic evidence. Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. The historic Maricopa County full forensic audit effort processed 20,895,610 digital and forensic images of varying formats, resulted in 208 million individual evidence-proof files. The system processed over 58 billion forensic measurements, resulting in over 2 trillion individual base computations. No hopium, no hype, just hardcore forensic evidence. Please make sure the Maricopa County Full Forensic Audit Archives survive. Donate now. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence. We can't do it without you. We need you. America needs you. Our future needs you. Please donate now. Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. Please donate now.